Hello and welcome into another episode of Reality Check. What is going on? I am Matt O'Leary, and today I am joined up with Jeremy, aka Jets Chaos. What is going on, my friend? How are you?
What is up? Crazy combine week, free agency upon us. I'm getting excited. I almost blew a gasket yesterday, screaming out the rant of my life.
Oh no, what were you screaming about? Why? What bothered you?
A Miami Dolphin fan came into my chat and said something, and nothing ticks me off more than a Miami Dolphin fan opening up their mouth as if there's some kind of higher echelon organization, which is a complete joke to me.
Yeah, this is 100% correct. So I do love to hear that. I don't want you to be too fired up because we got to save some energy for this show. And we got a lot of stuff to get into today, Jeremy. Where I want to start, or the reality check that I think we want to start with, is that somehow, some way, some people, whether it's beat reporters or fans, are trying to spin cutting Laken Tomlinson into it being not a good thing, or being not necessarily a mistake, but saying that that's too risky to move on from Laken Tomlinson. What do you have to say to that, Jeremy?
It's just so absolutely ridiculous. I mean, one sports writer we all love so much decided to say, the Jets, who are struggling in offensive line, cut another one to increase the struggle. It is complete nonsense. It's the same thing as saying the Jets have moved on from that guy Newman, right? Who came in as an emergency off the pile, the junk pile. It's like, if a guy stinks, a guy stinks. You don't run a guy out there because he plays every game and because you need somebody, if you can easily replace that guy. And it's not like we cut him and we lost all the money and didn't gain something. We gained $8 million.
Yeah, that's, to me, the key, right? Like, you're not cutting him and putting yourself in a bigger cap hole. You are creating more cap space for yourself. And let's be honest, I appreciate Laken Tomlinson for being someone who could play every day. That there is value in that. But the unfortunate reality is, you like that? The little reality in the reality check show? The unfortunate reality is the guy wasn't good enough. He was a below average starter being paid this year like an elite level player. His cap hit was going to be 18 million. So really, your only two options were, one, cut him, which they did, and I think was the right choice, or two, restructure him. But then you're just kicking that can down the road, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you consider, again, that you should be able to improve over Laken Tomlinson relatively easily, I might add.
Yeah, I think that the reason why we ate the full amount of the money of the dead cap part of it, save the 8 million, eat the rest. And I think one of the reasons you do that is it doesn't make sense to kick it down the road. People said, why didn't we post designate? Why didn't we wait? I think the reason you don't do that is because we are going to be signing some free agents, right? Everybody's screaming for some big ones, right? Let's say you sign a Mike Evans. You need that space down the road where you wanted to kick that money for those kind of contracts. Because if we sign a free agent, it's going to be a bonus laden contract that you can play with and manipulate to be not hard hitting to the cap this year, but pay it later. So if that's the plan, to sign any big contracts, you don't need to protect this year's cap so much like people think, because those new guys you're getting are not going to hit this year. They're going to be something you kick down the road, which is why I think we took the hit now and just ended it with him.
Yeah, I think, and again, the better option of the two, I think, anyway. And what I wanted to do, Jeremy, we'll pull it up and take a look at some of the free agent guards, which I really like this interior offensive line class for free agency, because when you look at it, even the number one guy on the market, which I'm not saying nor necessarily advocating for, the Jets signing Kevin Dotson, his projected cost at 17.25 AAV, even if we just take that as being the cap hit, which it wouldn't, right? Like, you could structure it differently. But even his AAV and the number one guard on the market would be less than what Laken Tomlinson was going to get anyway. So pretty much any single one of these free agents would be making less against the cap. And like Kevin Zeitler is a very popular name. Due to his age, he's going to be 34 years old. They're projecting just a 2-year deal with a $7.5 million AAV. How do you not immediately go, let's take that $8 million we just freed up and then allocate it with someone like this? Again, is he a little bit older? Yes, but a veteran interior guy on a short-term 1-2-year deal at a rough, $7 to $8 million against the cap seems like the smarter play.
Right. And there's so many different options that might not even lead to having to replace him this way. I mean, we're showing the easiest argument. The easiest argument is you take the $8 million you saved, and there's a list of players here that are better than Laken Tomlinson. It's an upgrade on the team. So it just balances each other out. Why not do that? Like, regardless of the other needs on the offensive line, at the very least, why wouldn't you just simply, it's like trading a player for another player. Like, and if anything, it's going to save us a couple of $1 million on the cap. So it makes absolutely no sense to question cutting him. It's the absolute right move. The real thing would be to just scratch your head if they didn't cut him. That would make no sense.
Yeah, and like Blitz Crew is saying, he's a member of the channel, big time supporter. What's up, guys? Happy that he was cut. Plenty of chances to upgrade the position with less money. Exactly. And Jay chimes in right after that and says Robert Hunt is solid. There are options out there. John, I stopped at Jon Runyan during my scroll because hello, former Aaron Rodgers teammate. That's going to naturally get the connection. But I'm not the biggest Jon Runyan fan. But due to his age and his familiarity with Rodgers and Hackett and stuff, even that would be an upgrade. One of my favorites, and I keep going back to it, you just got to scroll a little bit, 𝐷𝐵𝐞𝐽, because of his flexibility, could play left or right guard, could play center, has done it at a pretty high level. Projected contract, 2 years, $6.5 million AAV. To me, like all these options we just rattled off, no-brainer changes to do that with, with what the Jets are trying to do, moving on from their left guard and Laken Tomlinson.
Right. And then the other strategy might be, without even doing this, without even signing a guard, their plan might be they sign a left tackle. There's a guy that might spring loose from Jacksonville, for example, named Cam. I mean, but there are options there where we might get a left tackle. We might go into the draft, and who knows what we're going to do? Maybe we trade down and take JP, and take the best center on the board. Maybe we draft a right tackle, trade up from the 3rd round and do some maneuvering and get a really good center there, move Tippmann over to guard. There's a lot of different ways that we could fill in the offensive line, and none of them have to include Tomlinson, who we know is a weakness.
I love this comment from Peter up in the beautiful Hudson Valley. Says Zeitler, Runyan, 𝐷𝐵𝐞𝐽, Reisner, Cleveland, even Nate Herbig would be better options. He's not wrong. And he just listed off like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pretty obtainable guys. Like, it's not crazy to go out and say, like, I don't know, could you even get 2 from this batch? I guess it's dependent on, and that's what I wanted to get into next, because it was a big time discussion on the main Talkin' Jets show on Tuesday earlier in the week when we made our offensive line predictions. Where is Elijah Vera-Tucker and Joe Tippmann playing? I think that obviously is going to make an impact on what the Jets do in free agency and the draft to try to round out the rest of the unit.
No, absolutely. And that's where you have to really appreciate their flexibility in those players. Now, AVT, they made it very clear wherever they stick them, they're going to keep them there for the year. But they don't have to make that decision until all this plays out, which is the beauty of having a versatile player who can, theoretically come into any of the 4 spots and fill it for you.
That's what I wanted to see where you stand on this, because I got a lot of pushback for having AVT at right tackle in my plan. Some people are afraid because of the injuries that he's sustained at right tackle. Some would prefer him as a guard. And just my own personal take on it, I'm not against playing Elijah Vera-Tucker at guard, but we just went through some of those free agent options, and I think it's probably easier for the Jets to go into free agency and the draft and have to find two interior guys through free agency, let's say, then fixing tackle that way and through the draft. It's possible, of course, but I just think the most likely scenario is he ends up at one of the tackle spots. Where do you think he lands?
Yeah, look, his numbers at the tackle position were more than adequate. I mean, like, he played really well at right tackle. I don't believe in the injury thing. I think we just had some bad luck with the injury thing. I just think it's there. I don't think there's anything to that. I don't think you say, oh no, he can't play that position. He gets hurt in that position. You got to put the injury thing aside. We can't control that. You can't control injuries. You put the guy in the position that's best for the team. And I agree. It's much easier to fill interior guard than it is to go out and find two tackles. I mean, you could find a left tackle. We talked about that. Or, you know, the beauty of it is if you designate him to be the right tackle, you go out and you get a left tackle. You replace Tomlinson. Now you're talking about there's a million different ways to fill it. You could re-sign Connor and have him at center and move Tippmann out to guard. You can, and then sign another guard. You can get a guard in the third round. I mean, there's going to be good interior offensive linemen in the third round. I mean, we see it when you see these prices. We can afford to bring in two solid guards. We can also draft one in the third round. We can have a competition at guard. And then you have AVT lined up with whoever you bring in at left tackle. You have Warren and Max Mitchell as your swings, as your backup. You don't want them to have to play, but you have a plan because they are experienced players and they are serviceable. And then you have, not to forget, what that could do is open up 10, our 10th pick of the draft, to be anything.
Yeah, that would be nice, right? To go into the NFL draft and not have to go offensive tackle. I think that's probably the most likely scenario, right? Like, we talk about it all the time. I think that's probably the most likely scenario that would happen. But as you said, you don't necessarily need to do that as much if that's the route that you decide to go. I wanted to highlight Jay's comment because it's something that I agree with. We talked about AVT, and he thinks that Tippmann will be at guard. I think there's a very real chance that they could go the veteran route at center. I know you're a big fan of JPJ in the draft. I am as well. I think he's a phenomenal prospect, but like, I could just see them wanting the veteran to pair up with Rodgers at center rather than going the younger guy route. Is that something that you could see Joe Douglas doing as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I just think with the availability of like a Connor McGovern and others, and the availability in the later rounds of the draft, the third round of the draft, which we're talking about going with the veteran, which is fine. I think that center is the position to be less concerned about. And to me, in my opinion, when you have a guy like Tippmann and you could use him in either spot, why not fill the guard position? Right? Center is, in this case, I'm not saying this is always the case, but in this situation, the way everything looks right now, the center is the easier position to fill.
I agree. I definitely agree with you that I think center is the easiest of the spots to fill. And, you know, Atlin chimes in and says he'd rather sign 𝐀𝐮𝐫𝐚 in free agency, have AVT and Tippmann at guard, trade for Bowles at left tackle and draft Fuaga. That's not a bad plan either, if that's how things ended up falling. Not sure what Bowles would get in a trade, but he's kind of more of like a cap casualty kind of trade out of Denver, I would guess. But it's not a bad option. Kind of remaking, right, with 𝐀𝐮𝐫𝐚 and Bowles, kind of remaking that Denver Broncos line here with two of those new guys coming in from Denver.
I'm coughing out a lung, but look, anything that brings Fuaga onto this team, you're never going to see me complain. Fuaga is, assuming Joe Alt is gone, Fuaga is my OT2. He's the player I want if we're going to take a tackle on this team more than any other tackle in the draft. Other than Joe Alt, is Fuaga. I absolutely love him. So if we go a route that brings him to our team, and I don't just love him as a player, I love him as a guy, I love to love. But
No.
yeah, I love what he would bring to this offensive line. He has a warrior mentality. He's a leader. and he's the kind of guy that'll make the other offensive linemen better. He's like that guy we've been missing, that real leader on the offensive line to really bring the other guys together and to create kind of like a real unit, with one attitude. And I think Fuaga is that guy.
Yeah, I think he fits the Joe Douglas sniff test as well. Like, former captain, smart player, very intelligent, well respected, plays with a mean streak on the offensive line, dominant run blocker. Like, you just go through and it's like, okay, check. That sounds like a Joe Douglas thing. That sounds like a Joe Douglas thing, and right on down the line. So I know if we get to the Talkin' Jets draft party in the first round and we're all at the main event in Farmingdale and Fuaga's the pick, I think we're all going to be going nuts. I think we sign up for that in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. People are asking me, why are you so high on him all of a sudden? You're so excited about him. Well, I sat with Tigo and we watched every play on all 22 and watched him against UCLA, who has Latu, the edge that everybody's talking about right now. One, top 20 pick in the draft. Everybody's talking about and hyping up this great edge. And one thing about Latu is he lines up both on the left and the right. He's always moving around. We looked at every rep where he lines up over Fuaga, and he did nothing. Fuaga dominated him. Whether it was run blocking or whether it was preventing him from getting to the passer, it didn't matter. Fuaga owned him. You would never have guessed he's a special player that's going to get drafted if you watched him only against Fuaga.
Yeah, and that goes to, like, I like Latu. I think he's going to be a good player, and he's going to go probably somewhere in the top 20, right? And if he was that dominant against him, that's a really, really good sign. I do think he being Fuaga is a little bit underrated as a pass blocker. He gets a lot of love for his ability in the run game, but I do think that's an element to his game that's maybe even a little bit on the underrated side. For me too, just getting back to the construction of this offensive line, and it's something that you said a little bit earlier in the show that flew under the radar, but I think it's something that we should focus on too, just to round out this topic, is just that the Jets don't necessarily have to make the decision with AVT or Joe Tippmann right now. They could wait and see how the dominoes fall in free agency and the draft before they go, okay, AVT, you're going to be at either guard or tackle, or okay, Joe Tippmann, you're going to be at either center or guard. And for me, I think that's the right way to go about it, because I want to get my 5 in here, right? And then decide after the fact, okay, where of the 5 are they going to play? So I think there's really no rush in deciding where those 2 in particular are going to end up.
Absolutely. Definitely no rush. That would take away the biggest advantage of those players. I mean, the reality is that that's the one luxury we have in all this, and having to rebuild this offensive line, is that the 2 guys we have in there already allow us to approach this from so many different, ways and plans. Like, there's so many different ways to go about this because of those 2 players.
Absolutely. We got a super chat. Thank you so much to Blitz Crew. Always supporting Talking Jets. We appreciate it. He says, want a veteran center for us. Athletically, Aaron Rodgers is no Patrick Mahomes, and those snaps from Humphrey almost screwed the Chiefs all Super Bowl. Give Tippmann from some time first, I think he means. I don't disagree with that logic. Joe Tippmann's snaps were probably the biggest flaw with his game that I noticed. So we could do that even. We had guards and tackles filled up, but we could take a look at some centers as well and pull up, some potential options at the center market. So maybe we do that and take a look, because I definitely think that's a route that the Jets could go here. Connor Williams, with his injury, I mean, he got hurt towards the end of the year. I don't know if he's going to be ready for week 1, so I might rule him out. Andre James, Cushenberry is going to be costly. I think that they have him listed at $14 million on the top end of the market. So that's probably not the route that I would go. But my guy, scroll down a little bit, Tyler Biadasz, $7 million AAV on a 3-year deal. I really like him a lot. I think he's just a steady presence. He's not an elite player, but you're not paying him like one. You're paying him like a middle of the pack guy to do just that. I think Biadasz is the route that I would go if they're going to go with the veteran center. Do you have a preference, Jeremy?
I like the 7 million opposed to 14.50. I don't think you could throw that at center, especially when there's so many options. I mean, when you have limited resources and you're putting those resources in different places, you don't want to put too much of it in one spot that you don't have to. And when you have a guy that can play at a decent level in a position like center, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Now the one thing I'll say about Lloyd is, although it's saying that he's going to cost 𝐀𝐮𝐫𝐤 is going to cost this much money, remember last year they completely missed. Like, they completely overvalued the centers to the point where Connor McGovern went from a guy they were saying would be 8 to 10 million, and we got him for like practically the league mid. What we got him for 1.7. So you're certainly going to dip your foot in the water on this guy and see what the market is, because you never know. But I agree, once you get into double digits, it's like, no, we can resolve this. If we can resolve this in the $5 to $8 million neighborhood, then that's what you do, as long as you're getting a solid player that's available week to week. And that'll be fine for center.
Absolutely. We got another super chat here, so let's get to that. Mike the Stat Guy dropping in with one of his great stats. Stat alert: since 2000, there has never been a draft with less than 3 defensive players taken in the top 10, except 2021. And then goes on to say, I think �alt/Fashanu could be there for the New York Jets at 10. That's an interesting number. Like, when you look at a lot of these mock drafts, I feel like more often than not, you only see one player on the defensive side of the ball being mocked in the top 10. So it's a very real possibility that one of �alt or Fashanu there. I have a hard time seeing it be Joe �alt, though. What about you?
No, I agree. It's very hard to imagine Joe �alt slipping. It's just really hard to see him shaking past Tennessee, possibly the Chargers. Me and Dom have a disagreement there, but I do not deny it's hard. It's still a strong possibility the Chargers would take him. Definitely Tennessee. Fashanu is interesting because although I have Fuaga as my tackle too, I would take Fashanu if we hadn't addressed left tackle. Like, if we go into the draft without a left tackle, I'm not saying I like Fuaga so much better than Fashanu that I would take him while we need a left tackle. You have no choice. You take Fashanu. I agree that I have a different logic to why I think one of these guys can shake to us. And it's not so much because defensive guys, like, it's never happened, it doesn't happen. It's because I honestly think, and it's happened since people laughed at me when I said it 2 months ago, and it's been nothing but coming true. And I said this months ago. JJ McCarthy is moving up. He's been crawling up the board consistently for the last month to 6 weeks. And there's a very strong possibility that 4 quarterbacks will go in the top 9, because teams do not play around when it comes to quarterback. When you decide you want a quarterback, you don't take chances and you don't miss out. So there is a possibility that someone is going to trade up to grab JJ McCarthy. It might be trading up with us to get JJ McCarthy, but it might be somebody else. So don't be completely shocked if that happens. And if you get 4 quarterbacks in that top 9, there's no question to me that Fashanu is at the least is coming to us at 10, or like he'll be available at 10.
Absolutely. And while I don't think personally that JJ McCarthy is a worthy top 10 selection, that doesn't necessarily mean that the NFL agrees. Like, we've been hearing for a long time, as you said, that the NFL feels drastically different about JJ McCarthy. And when you take into consideration the teams picking from 11 to 15, they all might want to move up and ensure that they get the quarterback, right? If they like McCarthy the best, over Denver or the Raiders or Minnesota, one of those teams. So for me, I agree. I think there are going to be 4 quarterbacks going off the board. Maybe a guy on defense. The receivers are going to go. There's a chance Brock Bowers is going to go. And suddenly, as you said, one of these tackles falls. And another good point that I think you bring up too, if the Jets go into the draft and need the left tackle still, it has to be Fashanu over Fuaga because that fills that need, right?
Yeah, I mean, I personally am. I am someone who believes that Fuaga can play left tackle and has the skill set to do it. But at the same time, I'm not gambling that. I don't know that. I believe in the player so much that I believe he could eventually be a left tackle, but not year one as a rookie. I'm not going to put him there for the first time in his life at left tackle on a must-win window that we have over the next 2 years. You know what I mean? Like no way. You go with Fashanu, it's the safer pick. And then, and you live with that, and there's nothing wrong with it because Fashanu is a hell of a football player.
Absolutely. I'm in agreement with you there. Before we get into the second half of the show, because we do have another topic that Jeremy feels good news. He feels very steady Eddie on it. Doesn't get him very heated. He's very calm, cool, and collected when talking about our next topic. But we got to share some love for the new sponsor on the channel. So Aura, we are doing a jersey giveaway with Aura. So all you have to do is go to aura.com/talkinjets, sign up for the 14-day free trial. You can cancel at any time during the 14 days and you won't get charged. If you like the product, which I do, Ryan's talked about it. He's used it. I've used it. I've seen, it says your email's been on here on the dark web, and it really is I think a good product to have, to know who has your information, how you could change all that. Their individual plan is here. Let me minimize this so we get the full thing. Their individual plan is just $12 a month with the link on Talkin' Jets. But as I said, again, if you sign up just for the free trial and send us proof, you are entered to win a Jets jersey of your choice. So my question to you, Jeremy, is what would your next jersey be? What if you were the one to win this jersey giveaway? Who's the next guy that you want?
Wow. I feel like I don't want to jinx the player though.
Okay.
Let's see. I got my Jermaine Johnson. I got my Sauce. I order a lot of jerseys from Parts Unknown, and one of them didn't come out right. It got messed up. So I kind of need a Breece Hall.
Okay. I like that. I have the Breece Hall in the current whites, which are not going to be a thing anymore. But I am very excited for the Garrett Wilson number switch to number 5. So I think I'm going to go the green, the new version of the green jerseys when those come out, in the Garrett Wilson number 5.
There's a way my Garrett Wilson 17 jersey could be spared. If the Jets take Roman Wilson and he takes the number 17.
Ooh, okay. There you go. Maybe. Fingers crossed. So make sure to get in on the free trial and enter in to win for our jersey giveaway and help support the channel by supporting our new sponsors as well. Aura.com/talkinjets.
Yeah. Hey guys, Aura, because the only chaos you want is Jets chaos, not the chaos in your email box.
Yes. I should have you doing these reads, Jeremy. That was great.
I'm born for that.
I love it. So, okay, good news. This topic does not really bother Jeremy all that much, so we're going to get into it. Justin Jefferson trade rumors. Oh my goodness gracious. So, I said this to Jeremy off air, so he knows how I feel about it. But genuinely, how upset he gets over these rumors brings me joy. I find it very, very funny. I think it's entertaining. So I just want you to know that as you're going on these rants and raving online about Justin Jefferson and like these wild trade packages, how much it bothers you is entertaining to me.
It's just amazing to me. It took so long to convince like the last holdouts that Davante Adams was not going to be a Jet and to shut up and stop talking about it, unless we get him later down the road at the tail end of his career. But it was like so irritating. And I beg people, it's just such a waste of time and such a waste of conversation. Why are we having it? And finally, people have caught on. I mean, like literally the Raiders came out and said, he's a Raider. He's not going to play for anyone else. And finally, people said, okay, I guess we can't get Davante Adams. So, of course, a report has to come out with absolutely no foundation that Jefferson is available. And I knew it. I said, here we go. Here we go. Jets Twitter, Jets Facebook. We have to get Jefferson, right? We have to. It's not, wouldn't it be great if we had Jefferson? It's a need now. It has to happen. Fire JD if it doesn't happen. I don't care if you have to trade the next 8 first-round picks that we have. Give every draft pick we have for the next 5 years. You get Jefferson. I knew it was coming. And
yeah, sorry, go ahead. Keep going. Yeah. It's so good.
Can we at least start with, let's question the source that he's even available? Before we start talking about handing over our organization and the keys to the car to Minnesota.
Yes, I'm glad you said that. So let's pull up where this originated from. Okay, so very reputable, always correct. Dov Kleiman says, report, there is steam that the Vikings could make Justin Jefferson available via trade per, and then links Charles Walters. Charles Walters, you click on it, has not tweeted since November of 2022. And then if you want to go on to the site and you go to Twin Cities and the whole thing, he wrote an article like a month ago, and it was paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of the Minnesota Vikings might have to look at the avenue of trading Justin Jefferson if they're unable to come to an agreement on a contract, which seems, again, like a very reasonable way to put it. So somehow that turns into Justin Jefferson being available via trade. What is that?
It's called I want clicks, and I want to start conversation, and I want people to follow me on Twitter, and that's what a tweet like that is. It's reaching so far and grabbing so far, and even if you hear it get out of the camp of the player, if Jefferson, his agent, if he doesn't sign, we might have to demand a trade. That's called negotiating. We know this. Everybody does this. Every agent does it with every player. It means nothing. And we have like very serious, realistic, real world things to talk about. Like there really are offensive tackles that will be available. There really are wide receivers that will be available. There's a very real draft coming where there might be someone willing to trade, like different things. Do we trade down? Do we trade up? There's so many real things to talk about. And everybody wants to jump into fantasy land for something that's not even real.
Yes, absolutely. And just putting a pin in it briefly, because I missed this as we were doing the ads and changing topics. So I want to go back to super chat. Don't like missing those. Blitz Crew chimes in. Fashanu, I think, will be like Andrew Thomas, mad the first year, but eventually great, which not an uncommon thought too, by the way, because some think that he's a little bit on the raw side. And then goes in, he gives his own stamp of approval for Aura. It says Aura has been working well so far. It found several compromises. Yeah, same for me. I had like 3 or 4. So if it's finding it for Blitz Crew, me, Ryan, get in on it, and then also maybe win a Jets jersey. So I'm glad that Blitz Crew is having a good time with it as well.
Yeah, look, you can make that take for any rookie offensive lineman. I mean, because it's very common. It's very common for an offensive line. It's very common for any position. It's very common for an NFL football player, even though we want them to be great the first year. If you look at stats of players that have easy, measurable stats, very rare, very rare. Especially if you look at a great player who's had a great career. If you go to their rookie year, the stats never look as good as if you go somewhere in the middle of their career in their prime. Right? It's totally natural. So for Fashanu, yeah, he's not going to be as good as he's going to be year one. The question is he going to be good enough? Is he going to be average, serviceable at left tackle for us to win games?
I think so. And thank you again to Blitz Crew for the super chat and the support on Aura. So back to just the overarching Justin Jefferson trade rumors. We'll say that, but you're 100% right when you say it's just trying to draw up attention or grasping at straws. And I think it's important, which is really the whole exact reason we started this show, Jeremy, to talk about where are these ideas, stories, rumors coming from, and should Jet fans put any stock into it? And for Justin Jefferson, like, it's one thing to, like you said, go, wouldn't it be fun in a vacuum for Justin Jefferson and Garrett Wilson to be on the field together? Yeah, that's one thing, right? To go like, yeah, that would be really fun. That would be exciting if he was somehow available, whatever, and they figure out a way to do it. Yeah, that'd be really fun. But the chances of that actually happening in the year 2024 is so slim. So slim. It's not going to happen, guys. I don't want to, burst anyone's bubble. If you're a believer that it would actually happen, it's not going to happen. But instead, maybe we talk about like what is the better route for the Jets to go, or not necessarily better, because obviously Justin Jefferson is one of the best receivers in the sport, but what's a more realistic approach the Jets could take to filling that wide receiver spot next to Garrett Wilson?
Look, if a guy like 𝐐𝐮𝐫𝐚, for example, was to slip down to 10, which may or may not happen, and we already addressed the offensive line. I know 𝐐𝐮𝐫𝐚 is not Jefferson, but a guy like 𝐐𝐮𝐫𝐚 costs you that one pick, and that's it. And you have him for 5 years before you have to pay him crazy money. So maybe he is enough with Garrett Wilson that you don't need the overkill of Jefferson anyway, because you just need enough. You need a number 2 receiver that's dangerous, that can't be ignored. They can't just throw the safety and everyone onto Garrett Wilson because they're not afraid of your number 2. Your number 2 has to scare people. They have to be able to do things, and they have to be able to step up if your number 1 gets hurt. There are guys that can do that, right? And I just named one guy from the draft that has a good chance of doing that. And I think that's the way you have to think about it. You have to think about, there are things that went wrong for this team where we would be in a much better position if they went right. If Elijah Moore would have panned out and been what we believed and thought he could be, we'd be in a much different position, but he didn't. And now we have to deal with that. And we have to figure out who's going to be our WR2.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, right, like there are other ways to go about it. For instance, no one's saying, and you're not saying that Rome Odunze is better than Justin Jefferson.
No,
that's not what we're saying. But you're saying, is there a world where he's a capable number 2 wide receiver and is extremely cheap? Yeah, that is realistic. That is a much better approach for the Jets to take, or just sign someone that's available in free agency and not have to give up the 2 first-round picks, the whatever mid-round picks, and the $30 million a year contract.
Yeah, it would be a beautiful luxury if there was a way realistically to get a guy like Jefferson on your roster. But the reality is it's just a luxury. It's not a need, because if you look at teams that have won the Super Bowl for the last 20 years, did they need 2 number 1 outstanding Hall of Fame type receivers?
No.
I believe that Garrett Wilson, with a rebuilt offensive line that performs just average, and Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback, is a 1,500 to 1,600 yard double-digit touchdown receiver. That's your number 1 receiver. Now you just need a good receiver to complement them.
Yeah, I don't know where this idea changed to the point where you need to have 2 number 1s, right? Like, I guess a lot of people will point to the Dolphins with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and it's they're a great duo, great duo, but they haven't won anything. They haven't won shit.
They haven't won a playoff game
because they're not good enough at injuries are a part of it, yes, but also their quarterback's not good enough to get them past the first round.
Right. And then there's Cincinnati, who, they went to the Super Bowl that year, and people keep going back to Cincinnati. What have they done since? I mean, it's great to have 2 great wide receivers. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I would love to, but you can't just say, well, let's make moves and sacrifice first-round picks for the next 2 years and have no chance over the next couple of years to fill other needs and just totally bury the team into this one resource when it's not required. What's more required is that we stay a top 5 defense. What's more required is that we have an offensive line that's effective. and that we have a competent wide receiver alongside Garrett Wilson. That's what we need. Fill the needs. I would love one day for us to come in like San Francisco, where you have the whole team practically in place, and then you could utilize whatever resource you have to bring in that luxury, that extra player that's going to take you over the top.
I like this comment from NY Jets fan 4. He says, sign Ridley, draft someone in the 3rd or 4th round, and potentially bring back Corey Davis.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
What are your thoughts on? Well, first, just that I agree with you. I think that's a really good way to go about it. But so share your thoughts on why you like it, and then also the potential of Corey Davis coming back to the NFL.
Okay, so I like Ridley because I like his upside, and I think if you have a Garrett Wilson taking up a lot of the attention, Ridley could be very dangerous in all that we really need. I like Corey Davis because he'll come back at a discount. He knows the team. He's very admired by the team. The staff loves him. The players love him. So we know he's a great locker room guy. And that's a very sensitive topic right now for the Jets. So having a beloved guy, yes, he had some drops, but a lot of that has to do with catchability. A lot of our players with the quarterback play we've had the last few years have a lot of drops. So we're hoping that Aaron Rodgers is part of the fix of that. So drops are part of the game. Don't forget about other things that CD did. To actually forget that Corey Davis is a very good player is a mistake. He's not a good WR1, but WR2/WR3 with Ridley, give me a break. That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And if you go, let's do this. I want to pull up his numbers here. We'll do the side by side. Here's Calvin Ridley. Last year, first year back after missing all 2022, only played 5 games in 2021, had 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns as pretty much the go-to guy in Jacksonville. And if, as you said, he's the complementary piece, that's a very high-end number 2 wide receiver, which that's what we're both saying here, right? Like, we're not saying cheap out at wide receiver 2 and run back a similar idea of adding an Allen Lazard. Like, if the Jets signed Gabe Davis and was like, he's going to be our number 2 wide receiver, I wouldn't be that excited about it because I'm like, I know what Gabe Davis is. He's fine, but it's not the same as what adding a guy who's coming off an 1,000-yard season with 8 touchdowns would be. That would be a legitimate running mate for Garrett Wilson. There should be nice wide receiver options available in the 3rd or 4th round. Someone we always talk about a lot, Malik Washington from UVA is a name that's been brought up a ton. But with Corey, if you're bringing back Corey, it's not to be the team's number 2 at that point, which he originally was brought in here to be the team's number 1, right? In 2021. And people were upset about him because that's, he was really at the time a number 2 receiver being paid and brought in to be a number 1 receiver on, just a bad football team. But if he's your 3rd or 4th option, that's really different. And I was excited for him this year because I thought, okay, with, Garrett Wilson here and Aaron Rodgers and Allen Lazard and Mecole Hardman and all that, like maybe Corey Davis could give you solid production as like a 3rd or 4th option at wide receiver, and then he leaves before the season starts. I don't know. I think he could do a lot worse than, Garrett Wilson, Ridley, rookie wide receiver, Corey Davis, Allen Lazard as your receiver room.
Oh, it'd be fine. Well, let's talk about another thing we didn't bring up. I want to bring this up. If you look at Aaron Rodgers' MVP years, the 2 MVP years, and most of his career, but I want to specifically say in 2021, 2020, and then you look at all the other years before that he was Aaron Rodgers, right? If you look at the amount of yards that he threw to his top 3 wide receivers in all of his years where he was throwing 4,500, 4,800 yards, whatever it is. Do you know what the average number of yards, the total number of yards per season, his top 3 wide receivers year to year had?
What is it?
Take a guess?
There's got to be I would say it's an incredibly high percentage that it's just those top 3 guys and not much else after that.
Right. But it's actually 2,500 yards, because he had Aaron Jones and he had running backs his whole career. He had tight ends his whole career. When you looked, if you go back year to year and count up the stats of the top 3 wide receivers for Green Bay every year and average it out, or add it up, it's 2,500 yards a year. Some years it was 28, some years it was 23. So now if Garrett Wilson puts up 1,500 yards, 1,600 yards of receiving yards, how many do you need from 2 and 3 to have an average Aaron Rodgers year, top 3 receivers? Assuming Conklin and Breece Hall, we have other good receivers outside, gadget wide receiver 4. You don't need superstars at 2 and 3. You need just good players, competent players. You get a WR2 that puts up 700 to 900 yards, you're in great shape.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think that's the range. And then you get, as you meant, Tyler Conklin should give you what, 6 to 7, maybe somewhere in that range. Breece Hall is going to give you some. And
Ruckert's going to give you a couple hundred.
Yeah, and it goes exactly, and it goes from there. So
right. Xavier, hopefully Gibson, hopefully as our gadget guy is going to give you 300 to 400, maybe he has some big plays.
Yeah, so it's really just, and then it kind of goes back to the argument that some people have about potentially adding a Brock Bowers in the draft is like you just need to get more pass catchers in here to diversify the offense. Yes, the top 3 is going to take up a big chunk, and the number 1 guy is going to. You would hope Garrett Wilson takes up 1,400 of those 4,200 passing yards next year from Aaron Rodgers, let's say. But if you have a bunch of different guys in that, we'll say somewhere between 350 and 600 receiving yards, and then maybe your number 2 receivers like 800 to 900 receiving yards, like that's legit offense now.
Yeah, well, that's an offense that the year he won the Super Bowl because he had a top 5 defense. So the offense Green Bay was every year. First of all, most years they won 12 to 13 games, and they were contenders in the playoffs. Now you put in our defense, because all we want to do is get something that resembles what Green Bay's offense was. And even though he's older, Rodgers, it doesn't even have to be as good as those Green Bay offenses. If you're 80% of what those Green Bay offenses were with our defense, we're competing for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference then at that point. Like in Rodgers' MVP year, they were, let's see, 10th in points, 10th in points, sorry, the first in points in 2020. But even if they're just, I don't know, hovering around 10, maybe plus or minus a few spots, say between the 8th and 14th best offense with a top 5 defense, top 5 special teams, that's enough to be a very, very good team. The question is, can they get up to that part? And they have a lot of work to do to get there. The offensive line, the filling out a couple more receivers. They probably need a RB2 in here. And Nathaniel Hackett needs to get his head out of his ass a little bit, but there's a room to grow, but there's also, there's room to get to that, but there's a path is the point that I wanted to make. There's a path to that potentially happening.
Yeah. I think the nucleus of that plan is the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Because the offensive line is not only going to give Rodgers the time he needs, obviously, to effectively, let our receivers run their routes and all that. And he's deadly if you give him time, but also just Breece Hall, right? If Breece Hall is going behind a functional offensive line, look what he did with a dysfunctional offensive line. I think we still don't maybe understand, none of us, just how good Breece Hall could be if he had a functional offensive line every week.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And there is sorry, I wanted to go back up for a second. First, State Jet says, as 2023 will tell you need insurance and depth, which we went without last year and lost big time. That's, I think, what scares me in a way about the offensive line and wide receiver rooms. I think they'll have enough to do some patchwork there, but how good is their depth going to be beyond that? Because that's, again, it's going to come into play. No one goes through an NFL season completely healthy. So are they going to be able to have enough to have that depth? And that's why I hope the Jets are taking multiple swings, not just early, not just in the first round, but instead of maybe that project linebacker that you want to convert into, or vice versa, the safety that you want to convert into a linebacker, maybe add another body on the interior offensive line, maybe add another wide receiver that you think could develop. Like, I just think they need to take as many shots as possible, as many dart throws as possible at their biggest needs, which is wide receiver and offensive line.
To me, that's why you have Connor McGovern signed, because he doesn't mind not starting. He doesn't mind being a mentor to people. He's at that point of his career. He's just happy to be there. He's cost $1.7 million, whatever it is. You throw a guy like that, you have him for depth. The ideal thing was that Connor would never have to play, but that's what makes you sleep at night, right? You have a Connor McGovern. If one of the interior guys go down, you have some flexibility with the players there. You can bring Connor in. You want guys you trust. You don't want guys named Newman. You don't want Wes. I don't want that. Connor McGovern was nothing to be thrilled about as our starting center. He was the middle of the road. Nobody's going to get excited about him. But as a backup, a veteran guy like that knows the system, that's been with the team, come on. Those are the things that you do. Those are the moves that I think we just have to make.
I'm with you. I like this comment from David, who says, Garrett, Ridley, Davis, Lazard, Gibson, Brees, and J.K. Dobbins. That's enough with Rodgers and an O-line with this defense. Can I add it? I think you're close, but I would like to add either a third or fourth round wide receiver in that mix as well. And I'm feeling a little bit better about that group. What do you think?
Maybe that kid Johnny Wilson will be available. There's a few wide receivers back there. Malachi Corley or something.
Yeah, Malachi Corley's another one. Johnny Wilson is what, like 6'7"? He's a monster. That kid.
Yeah, but he just doesn't create space. He's a catch contest guy. He's a guy you could throw into the corner for a contested catch, maybe, or something.
Yeah,
maybe convert him to a tight end.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to play tight end at the next level. We'll see. I like this one from Dakota. He's always in the chats. You guys know him well. He says, all I know is Hardman was the real snitch. Maybe we close our show with that briefly. What are your thoughts on Mecole Hardman, and does he play in the league again?
He's a lowlife, and he's you almost gotta feel sorry for a kid, because he's actually doing what Antonio Brown was doing, except this guy had a chance to still have a career. So it makes no sense. It's career suicide to me. There's always a stupid team that doesn't care about character, that'll just take him and say, we could fix his attitude, that sees that whatever talent he has. So I'm sure he'll figure out how to land somewhere. But man, if I was his agent, I'd say, you're costing yourself so much money. Shut up.
Yeah, it's so crazy to me that, like, just a few weeks ago, wasn't it the first episode or one of our early episodes, we did like the Mecole Hardman storyline, right? We're talking about how, he was made out to be this big hero in the Super Bowl, this and that. But to go from that to a few weeks later being potentially exposed for tampering, quitting on your team in week 4, and then also maybe leaking the offensive game plans because you were disgruntled, is a real quick fall from grace.
Yeah. That's like you are the lowest character human being alive. Like, if you look at the characters that are defending him on Facebook and Twitter, that's not the people you want on your side defending you.
No, absolutely not. And, like, again, he has to know his place a little bit. He's a wide receiver 4 or 5 who gives special teams value. Who is taking a chance on that guy who just goes out and does something like that? Very, very strange, very bizarre to me.
It'd be very fascinating to see if somebody does. Hey, I want to let everybody know, before we finish off, I actually have a video coming out that it's a live premiere, so you could talk in the chat there right after the show at 4:00 Eastern. The video is going to become public, and it is specifically about what we're talking about. It's about all the different ways we could build the offensive line and what makes the most sense. So, it's a whole part. So if you guys want to continue the discussion, you could jump onto Jets Chaos, and the chat will be open while the video plays.
I love that. Always love that. So I'm going to ask for a little bit of a little tease. Can you give me a little bit nugget that I should be looking for going into this video here at 4:00?
The nugget is it's going to be really revolve around the draft and why it's important to draft offensive linemen too.
I like it. So yes.
Yeah. So my guy, Tony, who's on the video with me, he's very draft focused. Like he wants to resolve a lot of it via the draft.
All right. So there you go. Make sure to head over to the Jets Chaos channel as the fun continues. We go from one show, we hand it right off to the next on how the Jets should rebuild the offensive line. Guys, if you're not already, I'm sure you are, but if you're not already, please make sure to subscribe to the Talkin' Jets channel. We have new episodes coming out almost daily. You got on Mondays, you got Dom C and Ryan doing draft stuff, the OG show on Tuesday evenings, then Tigo and Green Bean fist fight every Wednesday. That's a great tune in. And then on Thursday afternoon, little afternoon delight for you, me and Jeremy talking about the reality check for Jets fans. So
they also need to go to the Talkin' Jets store and buy their tickets to the draft party, because guess what? You don't want to watch the draft alone when you could watch it with the chaos. And I'm going.
Jets Chaos in the building, making the trip from Cal. It's official. I am super excited for that. So happy to get Jeremy in the building for that. So that's going to do it for us on this episode. Again, before you go, please make sure to like, share with a friend, subscribe. That'll do it for us. I'm Matt. He's Jeremy, and we will catch you next time.